Hi, everybody, and welcome to Hard Ticket. I'm Jeffrey Bogus.
And I'm Tristan Moore.
And what a show we have for you tonight. You go to the movies with a group of friends because you think there's a double feature, but it turns out that it's just two movies playing at the same time. And in this episode, I'm assuming that you see which movies they are. And if you're me, you're like, why did somebody must not have said anything, because I wouldn't have come out for this. I'm not happy.
You're getting pranked tonight, basically.
Yeah, this is our show. We got two movies that we have to choose between. Tristan, can you just
get this over with?
Just get this over with and tell me about option number A.
Option number A is a 1972 film called Deliverance. It's a survival thriller movie directed by John Boorman. Deliverance is about, well, it's basically a boy's trip gone wrong in the wilderness, I would say. Gone really wrong. It's this guy, this outdoor fanatic who really idolizes this river. It's called the Kahulawasi. The Kahulawasi
You got
River.
it. Nice.
I practiced before the show. Which is not actually a real river, but the river is going to be dammed up and turned into a big lake, and before that happens, this guy takes his friends out for a river rafting trip to sort of experience the grandeur of nature before it's ruined by civilization, basically. Mm-hmm. So I feel like
that's that one.
That's that one. Would you like to introduce option number B?
Yeah, option number B is a movie called Wrong Turn.
Faster, more intense.
Option number B is a movie by Rob Schmidt. It's called Wrong Turn. It came out in 2003. It's about a guy who's going to Raleigh, North Carolina for a job interview, and gets caught in traffic, so he decides to take the back road, and he ends up accidentally running into a parked car, which the car has been...
The tires have been deflated by razor wire.
Yeah, there's been a trap basically set. And so this group of attractive young 20-somethings end up roaming the woods, trying to find help so that they can get back to their normal lives, and instead they find a group of murderous hillbillies. So,
cannibal hillbillies, we should mention.
Right, very, very important.
Yeah, and the connective tissue between these two films, Wrong Turn takes place in West Virginia, so firmly in Appalachia, and Deliverance takes place in Georgia, which isn't, exclusively an Appalachian state, but it does take place in the Appalachian part of Georgia, and both of these films depict Appalachians in a certain light that we'll get into.
Yeah, I will say both movies did to the beautiful Appalachian Mountains what Jaws did for the ocean, is kind of the way that I put it. In case you weren't aware, this is our West Virginia Day special episode, where we're talking about two movies that have had a very large impact on the reputation of not just West Virginia, but the entire Appalachian region as a whole. And another reason that I kind of feel like these movies go together is that they're both kind of inevitable. Deliverance isn't a horror movie. There are certain scenes that are suspenseful, but it's a survivalist movie, right? If you ever go overnight camping in the woods, even to the bare minimum degree, you have to have at least the bare minimum survival instincts to rough it. And Deliverance throws as many survivalist obstacles at its protagonists as it can. Wrong Turn, on the other hand, is a slasher movie, or as director Rob Schmidt refers to it, a body count movie, which he said in an interview that I'll bring up later.
That's charming.
And by 2025, slasher movies have been about every conceivable threat, and some that don't even exist. There's killer clowns, killer condom, monster. We watched a movie about a killer sofa one time. Yeah. So the hick country killer entry was always inevitable, especially given the legacy of Deliverance. And so Wrong Turn is probably the most notorious answer to that, even if it's not the first. And there's an article by Bowdoin College, from Bowdoin College, called "Portraying Appalachia: How the Movies Can Get It Wrong," that identifies a few other movies that have, done this trope, done it poorly. There's Timber Falls, Trapped. I think they put Cape Fear by Martin Scorsese in that category as well. And yeah, they just play into these stereotypes about Appalachians, about hillbillies. Tristan, can you kind of tell me, when I say stereotypes about Appalachia, can you give me just like what's the first thing that comes to your head?
An old junker car in the yard. It's it's overalls, it's a banjo, it's a gun, usually a shotgun or a hunting rifle.
Yeah.
Sometimes with a scope optional, we'll say.
Yep.
It's the hillbilly is usually white, portrayed as
usually white,
inbred, simple, pitiable because of their socioeconomic status.
Sometimes.
Occasionally noble. There's a certain romantic side to the hillbilly stereotype sometimes, which I think Deliverance touches on briefly, with the banjo boy in the beginning. There's a certain kind of melody thing going on there where they're dueling with their banjos, and the kid's basically a savant, although he doesn't speak and he doesn't seem to have the manners to acknowledge the people in front of him. So that plays into another stereotype that they're, like I said, simple and ill-mannered.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest stereotype these two movies perpetuates is that people from Appalachia are dangerous, is kind of what I get from it. Do they enforce other stereotypes? Sure. The stupidity of the mountain people? Absolutely. Are they inbred? Oh, you bet. But the aggressive, violent nature of, quote, mountain men is the elephant in the room. You can easily trace that back to the way people attribute un-American values to groups they don't understand or don't agree with. Look at the unhoused in America right now, frequently generalized as violent, dangerous, and desperate due to poverty, and definitely not because the system failed them in any way. The United States perceived folks in the mountain towns of Appalachia as impoverished in the mid-1960s, starting around the time LBJ declared war on poverty in his inaugural address in 1964. This was less than 10 years before Deliverance, and it sent legions of reporters and photographers flooding into the regional boundary defined by the Appalachian Regional Commission in 1965, stretching as far north as southern New York State and as far south as east central Mississippi. We start seeing the power of these images, this poverty porn captured voyeuristically from cameras through car windows. They show people on porches without shoes, so the nation starts mailing shoes to Appalachian towns. They show rusty old cars in unkempt yards, an image recreated in both the movies we're going to talk about. But nobody seems concerned with asking how they ended up there to begin with. They just want to treat the symptom. Both of these movies, Wrong Turn and Deliverance, were they were first-time watches for both of us. And I think from my standpoint, I was very aware of the two of them, and that their status is, a blind spot for me was intentional. I knew that these were movies that I wanted to avoid because I would get upset at the portrayal of, Appalachia and the damage that kind of both of them have done to the region. And that's largely a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I feel like we're definitely taking a little bit of an experimental episode of Hard Ticket, because at least for your part, the hard ticket here is kind of choosing the lesser of both evils, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And obviously we went into this episode having not seen either movie before. I had a rough idea of what Wrong Turn would be because I've heard it talked about so many times. It's a little infamous, I feel like, in this state, in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Deliverance, though, was one that sort of eluded me. I'd heard some stories about the film, and actually when I was doing research for our Pulp Fiction Fight Club episode, Deliverance came up specifically during the infamous scene in Pulp Fiction where Marcellus Wallace and Bruce Willis's character Butch are kidnapped by Zed and his crony, and there's a whole There's a whole scene there that mirrors a very infamous scene in Deliverance that we will get into. I feel like we should probably pick a lane first, though, between Deliverance and Wrong Turn. And since Deliverance came out first, I think it maybe would be smart to start there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair place to start. And I already alluded a little bit to the culture into which it was released. But there's also, the fact that it was based on a book by James Dickey, author James Dickey, who also wrote the original screenplay that was adapted by John Borman. It came out in 1972, made $46 million on a $4 million budget. So it was profitable, successful by all standards. This movie is preserved by the Library of Congress as culturally and historically significant. It's in the AFI, top like 100 years, 100 thrills. It's at number 15. It is high up there. It has a prestigious reputation.
Yeah.
Tristan, can you tell me sort of your general thoughts on your first time viewing of this movie?
Going into Deliverance, I had a certain expectation, especially because we paired it with Wrong Turn. And you're talking about your kind of background knowledge. It sounds to me like you knew more about Deliverance going in than I did. So
yes.
So I went in expecting, it opens with these kind of patronizing city slickers dressed in khakis, and they're driving their car with, the Georgia Tech license plate. They're meeting these, for lack of a better word, we'll call them hillbillies or Appalachians. I mean, we don't want to stigmatize the term necessarily, but the movie is definitely leaning into a certain image of Appalachia, of rural, poverty-stricken Appalachia, which, in my opinion, does exist. I do think there is that version of Appalachia in certain parts of the region.
Well, they're codifying this stereotype at the same time. This is early enough. This movie is by name referenced in Wrong Turn. They're like, you're creeping up on this private property, and they're like, I've seen a little movie called Deliverance. Let's take a wrong turn around home.
Yeah. Which, in my opinion, I think it's being used incorrectly in Wrong Turn. I have an opinion about this movie, which is that I think that some of its stereotypes, some of the cultural legacy of Deliverance has been misinterpreted and has been, I think mostly because of a scene in the middle of the movie, which is very controversial and which definitely sticks out in the mind more than anything else. Because you kind of find out at the end of the movie that the characters that the hillbilly, quote unquote, hillbilly characters at the beginning of the movie that they meet back up with are actually perfectly normal, fine people who help them. The banjo boy speaks finally at the end of the movie, and he sounds like any normal person.
Does he?
Yes. When they come out of the river, he's there with the family at the truck, and he speaks to I believe it's John Voight's character. And so to me, I feel like the movie it is addressing stereotypes, but it's also not. I think it's a complicated thing, because I think the movie is acknowledging that there is a version of Appalachia that is the one that people are familiar with from newspapers and from other films and other stories, but it's also not trying to paper over that necessarily. It's just saying, yes, this does exist. These are people who have been failed by a system. And here's why I think that the stereotypes that are explored in Deliverance aren't as harmful, certainly, as the stereotypes explored in Wrong Turn, not least of which because they're not as cartoonish, and obviously nobody in Deliverance is a cannibal. But also the characters of Deliverance, the four main characters, and especially Burt Reynolds' character, all represent to me a very particular form of liberalism that kind of parachutes in and out of these environments. I think similar to what you're talking about with people driving by in their cars, taking pictures of people on their porches without shoes and socks and stuff. I think Burt Reynolds' character, he does romanticize the wild. He does romanticize nature, but he looks at the people who actually live in it. He looks down on them, and he uses his money to get what he wants.
Yeah.
And they're just service workers to him, basically.
Machines are going to fail. and the system's gonna fail. Then?
And then what?
Then survival. Who has the ability to survive? That's the game. Survival.
And you can't wait for it to happen, can you? You can't wait for it. Well, the system's done all right by me.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that there are people who will shoot you in the woods on purpose. Yeah. But this is kind of where like, I'll talk a little bit more about James Dickey in a sec, but I think this is where the people that exist in Appalachia are much more aligned with Burt Reynolds' character. They are, he's definitely a doomsday prepper, like he's talking about how society is going to collapse. And when it does, law and order will be determined by who has the best survival instincts, who has the strength to care for and tend for themselves. But to me, this movie has it backwards. The backwoods folks establish themselves apart from urban society due to self-sufficiency. They're the ones who want to be left alone to their own devices a lot of the time. They're not these agents of chaos who are going out, they're not just shooting at these guys. They're pulling them out of the river, out of the activity that they're doing to, incite violence, which is where this really gross, gratuitous stereotype comes into play most harmfully. The Appalachian setting here, I'm kind of attributing that to James Dickey's experience at war. He's a World War II and a Korean War veteran. He wrote Deliverance, and you can definitely see, and the imagery in the movie of Deliverance too, they're like, they've got these weapons, they're crawling through the woods. Like, you're definitely getting this sense that he's pulling from personal experience about a lot of these things, even though he was an Air Force pilot. He's painting the Appalachian terrain as this lawless area because the themes of Deliverance are touching on, how is law defined when there's no societal structure in place to enforce it.
Right.
That is a trope that you see, I think, most commonly in Westerns, right?
Yes.
Westerns are where I think it works the best. I've seen it in war movies too. It kind of, I think, comes from that experience clearly here. But does it belong in this context? Does it belong in the Appalachian Mountains?
The way I'm thinking of Deliverance isn't as a Western, but as a post-Western, right? Mm-hmm. This is an area of the country, a region of the country that has already been conquered and has been left behind by industry, by capital, right? And so, okay, let's go back to Burt Reynolds' character, because you're talking about him as a prepper, and I believe you're right. I think he is that type of person, and I think the politics of preppers has seeped into Appalachia broadly, but I think if you're, especially if you're looking at this in the context of the decade that it was made in, your preppers are going to be people who can afford to be preppers, right? Like, Burt Reynolds' character says stuff like there's no risk with insurance, and he says he says stuff like sometimes you have to lose yourself before you can find anything, which is like, that's something that someone who has the luxury to actually lose something would say, right? He's full of these little, these little sayings and stuff like that, and he does relish the idea of society falling apart, but I think all you have to do is see what happens when he's taken out of the equation, when he's basically, he gets a horrible like compound fracture, his bone sticking out of his thigh, and he's incapacitated the rest of the movie. He's utterly useless, because at the end of the day, the natural order is one that can't be deified or romanticized. It can't be gamed. It's just things fall into place, and as it falls into place, Lewis, Burt Reynolds' character, is utterly useless by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So, well, I just feel like, you have to pit the Appalachian stereotypes, which you could argue isn't always a stereotype, obviously, because there are people who do live in the woods and have been abandoned by civilization, who don't have access to clean running water, who don't have, roads that are maintained. They're the people that society's left behind because capital has vacated the area. So you pit that up against a person like Lewis and the rest of his friends, who to a lesser extent represent a sort of detached liberalism. You have, John Voight's character, who's he strikes me as a little bit of an academic, and there's a sort of detachment to him. He doesn't necessarily judge the people that he's around, but then you see obviously he gets pushed over the edge after the midpoint scene, which is important, and we are kind of skirting around it, and we should eventually we need to address it head on.
We will, we can address it head on for sure, but I do want to bring up a quote by the author Meredith McCarroll, who's author of the book Unwhite, Appalachia Race and Film, who was also a speaker in the documentary Hillbilly that I'm surprised it's taken me this long to reference. I also watched that documentary in prep for this episode. It deals with Appalachian stereotypes specifically. It came out in 2018, and how there's a very politicized conversation around that time. And it eventually, it all spirals into politics. But there's some really salient points about this thing that isn't studied a lot. And this quote by McCarroll it's actually about the movie Lawless, which is a movie that has Tom Hardy and Shia LaBeouf in it. It came out, I think, early 2010s. But it's a crime thriller set in rural Virginia about three moonshiner brothers who go head-to-head with a corrupt sheriff. And the moonshiners are the Appalachian representation, and they're anti-heroes. Like technically they're up against the law, and they have to take moral matters into their own hands. But the representation that these people from Appalachia goes with McCarroll's quote is that Lawless reinforces this idea of Appalachian people who are living not just off the grid, but off the moral grid, finding ways to survive by all means necessary, often outside legal boundaries. And a movie like Deliverance also justifies the protagonist's decision to not come forward to the law about taking a man's life. It's heavily implied that they would not stand a fair trial based on the kinship of the people of this town.
Yeah, and I believe that Lewis's character does believe that. I mean, he believes that by evoking a stereotype, which is that this whole community is basically inbred and all this stuff. So I think if you grant that he's probably right, I think maybe you buy a little bit into the stereotype that he is evoking. And there is a gray area there. I mean, it might be true. It might be true that if they go forward with admitting to the murder, justified murder, in my opinion, of this guy, self-defense, that they might face consequences because the jury might be biased, obviously. But I also think that they make that decision. Well, three of the members of the crew make that decision, and it has radical consequences for everybody, because it's basically them saying, okay, so the middle of this movie, there is a brutal rape scene.
Yeah.
It is not... God, it's not shied away from in any way. It's rarely. I don't know if there's even any cuts in it. To me, it felt like all one take, right? Because you're watching it and you're just sort of horrified by it, and you're not really thinking about the way that it's it's being portrayed, other than just how awful it is to watch. And obviously it's not a flattering portrayal of an Appalachian person or two Appalachian people who happen to be the ones who were perpetuating the sexual assault. But I think the movie then this is a very touchy subject, right? This is a sensitive thing to talk about, and actually didn't
you want me to cut in here and save you or something?
I want to say that I didn't know the extent to which the scene would be portrayed before I watched the movie. And maybe if I had known, I would have been like, maybe we should watch something a little lighter for for a podcast. But I will say, I think there's justified self-defense in that scene, right? Because the assault was ongoing. One of them was armed. I think it's fine that they killed the main guy, the guy who was perpetuating the assault. And I think the decision then to, like I said, kind of buy into the stereotype that, well, the whole jury is going to be inbred and ignorant. They're just going to take the other guy's side, and they're going to, whatever punishment's going to come our way. I think the decision to buy into that is itself, buying into a stereotype. And I think that the idea that now they can just simply subvert the law because that's the playing field that that they're on, I think that kind of damns the guys. I think, the one character, Drew, who was against it, who was fully in favor of taking the body upriver to the sheriff and turning it in and being like, this is what happened, so on and so forth. And there's ways to prove that a sexual assault occurred, by the way. I mean, maybe I don't know exactly about the 70s, but I mean, there are rape kits and stuff like that. I think there's ways to prove that there was an assault that took place, and that would be presented, in a trial and stuff like that. I understand the panic of being like, oh, we might not be able to get away with it if we do turn it in. But at the end of the day, I think the decision tears apart the group. It causes Drew to... he's the only one who actually fully gives into nature at that point, I feel like. He's the one who's like, okay, fine, if you're really going to live in this... You want to live... Pray... You want to pretend... you want to play at living in this lawless society. He's pointing especially at Lewis, who's just... the guy's dressed up in this, like, goofy outfit. He's shirtless. He's got his bow and arrow because that's just more manly than a gun, right? Like, that's just... He really fancies himself as this guy who he's a survivalist. He's a survivor man. And when Drew decides to jump into the river and kill himself, Lewis is the one who can't believe that a man would do that. He believes that they're being attacked. He cannot attribute that decision by Drew to anything else but the agency of the people that he is so biased against. He's convinced that they're taking revenge on them, that Drew has been shot. And but basically, Drew's decision to give himself to the river is what perpetuates the rest of the crisis at the heart of the movie, which is the midpoint turn. So, so now, if you would like to jump in and save me.
I was hoping in our second episode, especially after talking so in depth about Fight Club, that we would deal with a pair of movies with a little bit less heavy socio-political context, but I feel like we definitely went in the opposite direction.
Yes, we went the exact opposite direction.
I can concede that the ultimate meaning of Fight Club was misconstrued by a sect of people that just totally got the wrong idea about what it's trying to say. With a movie like Deliverance, I'm firmly on the opposite side. And there are cuts in the rape scene, because once the actual act begins, there are cuts closer up on the perpetrators that are like on their teeth and all these grimy characteristics about them to emphasize just how scummy and grotesque that they are. And obviously the act that they are participating in is a grotesque and, a kind of subjectively evil act. But these are also, they're cutting to these images that are very heavily associated with the region, and whether they were necessarily so directly associated before this movie or not, I'm not sure. But ultimately, the implication is that they would not have stood fair trial. They were correct in their decision. There are rape kits, and you can test for that stuff in a fair trial, but ultimately there's no reason to believe that these men would have received a fair trial from the authorities in this town. Now, I am, hyperfixating on this, this very specific effect that the movie had on Appalachia and Appalachian culture. And not giving it a lot of credit for like how eloquently it speaks the cinematic language, the complexities of the themes that it tackles. It is very complex. There's a reason that it's still in the conversation today in terms of like preservation, in terms of one of the best movies ever made. But I see it as just such an objectively harmful piece of film. When Ed finally finds help at the gas station and he finds that family, and there's just like these people sitting in the bed of a pickup truck and hand-me-down furniture with tires just lying about, that image to me after the ordeal they went through feels like the biggest f*** you to the region. And then you get the scene of them, the survivors sitting down at the dinner table, getting that good old-fashioned Southern hospitality. It's really interesting how these stereotypes, contradict each other, how they coexist. That almost feels like an apology for, the portrayal of the people in this area up until that point. But then, you kind of get the sheriff who backtracks on it all. It's like one step forward, two steps back again. These it's just such an overwhelmingly negative portrayal that it is impossible for me to get past.
I I disagree. And you talk about these stereotypes coexisting. I think that is reality. I think that reality is complicated, and I think that I think that there are people out there who pile up in their pickup truck and drive around, and people who don't have shoes. I mean, we've driven through southern West Virginia. We've seen some of these stereotypes. Now you and I, we can't pretend that we're not. We were raised in the suburbs, right? Mm-hmm. Like we didn't grow up in southern West Virginia and the coal fields and everything like that. But the stereotype, the image, I don't think is inherently false. I think there is truth to it, and I think you can't neglect that truth, because that flight actually happened. That abandonment actually did happen. There's a reason that there's an opioid crisis in southern West Virginia, and there's a reason that there's a poverty crisis and a literacy crisis. I think that's all fair game to portray. In the same way that I think it's also fair game to not romanticize or pity Appalachian people by not having one of them be a rapist, by one of them be an actual monster, because I think that those two impulses exist within any group of people. I think any group of people can be that way, and so I mean you have the whole idea of now that we're living in this basically this lawless natural world, they become the three of them who are left after Drew kills himself, they're overcome with paranoia, right? Because they're convinced that somebody's shooting at them. They're convinced that these stereotypes are actually coming out of the woods and taking revenge on them, these basically ghosts. And you have that great scene, I think, where Ed's climbing the mountain, which, by the way, John Boyd actually did that. I don't know if you read that, but
the day for night looks terrible in that scene, by the way.
I think it's very obvious. I don't necessarily think it looks terrible. I think it's sort of otherworldly. It's very obvious. It is very obvious, but it's not. To me, it kind of fits with the weird kind of descent that this movie is after the rape scene, which is the river becomes so ferocious, and it baptizes them and spits them out, frothing, Mm-hmm. And then the next scene is he climbs this jagged peak in this weirdly kind of otherworldly, strange light. The sky at night is glowing in this weird kind of feverish, hellish, like, I don't know. There's a transformation occurring in this sequence of events. I think that's where the movie gets its title. I think there's the deliverance there. He gets to the top and wakes up, and there actually is a man up there with a gun, and he kills him because he assumes that he's the guy who was shooting at him, and he finds out he's the wrong guy. And
no, he's the right guy.
No, he's the wrong guy.
He's got dentures. He's got dentures in.
No, but the guy didn't have facial hair and all this stuff, and he had the wrong gun and everything. It's not the right. I don't believe it's the right guy. I think it's the wrong guy, and that's why the guy's not even able to look at him and be like, "Are you sure that's the right guy?" Like, I think. And maybe the ambiguity is the point. To me, I didn't sense any ambiguity in that scene. To me, I was like, it was clear cut. That's not the right guy. Their paranoia led them to kill a man who is ultimately innocent. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, now I can understand why he did have like the false teeth or whatever. So it could have been the other rapist. In my opinion, the way that the scene played out and the way that the guy looked, because he had facial hair. And the guy in the forest didn't, I don't believe. Maybe I got to rewatch the movie. Maybe we both got to rewatch this movie because now I think we're running into issues of, because I don't necessarily know if these are interpretational issues or if it's just like we need to actually go back and
I think there is ambiguity. I think there's ambiguity over whether Drew was actually shot or if he dove into the river.
Okay. Okay.
But I mean, ultimately, I don't think this movie cares about the people in this region. There is like a difference between the way that our protagonists who are from Atlanta, they're city slickers, how they interact with these people, and they're clearly like dismissive of them. They're clearly in the wrong for that too. They're assholes at the beginning of this movie.
They are, yeah.
But it, like, I don't know, a lot of it just kind of gets lost in this really intense moral struggle that I feel like the characters are grappling with. And the movie industry itself, it has a history of being exploitative as well. They came in, they shot this movie, they used extras, they used local people, and they used fourth grader Billy Redden, pulled him out of his classroom to play the kid on the banjo. Billy Redden got $500, and last time anybody checked in 2016, just works at a Walmart in Appalachia because
Right.
he never got to go to Hollywood. He never got to, his dream never came true. And worse than that, he became the face of this this caricature, this inbred savant, like, you talk about these stereotypes coexisting, and I can concede that as well. But it's all about what this movie chose to portray and what it didn't, because I don't think they coexist in this movie.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think you're right that I don't think the movie cares about Appalachian people. I think that's probably right. It certainly doesn't coddle Appalachian people.
No.
It's not a film about advocacy or anything like that. I think it takes more of a detached lens, and I might have some issues with that portrayal, because I do think people of Appalachia probably do deserve a little bit of pity. Maybe I don't know if pity is the right word, but they definitely deserve some help out of the situation that they've been handed from birth, most of them. So but I don't see it as a movie that necessarily cares, and I think it is regrettable, obviously, the treatment of extras and just coming in and filming stuff and just leaving it. Although I think didn't the river become like a major tourist destination or something like that?
Oh yeah, I mean there's like fences and stuff all around it now.
Yeah,
like
I think
locks and dams, I think.
Yeah, I think I read like some stuntmen maybe started like a rafting company or something in the region, or
Nice.
Yeah, something like that. And that stuff is just typical. I'm not going to judge the movie on that basis, in my opinion. I don't think that's as important. I think maybe, and I think there's another theme maybe that we're skirting around a little bit, and it's the theme of masculinity, because I think that Lewis's Burt Reynolds' character, he is like really trying to tap into that macho masculinity thing. And you and I, we camp a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think of camping as a really interesting exercise, right?
Yeah, you remember that time we were kayaking on the Greenbrier River and your kayak flipped on the rapids?
Yes. The one time I brought my phone with me on a kayaking trip, I flipped over. Yeah. Yes. So we camp, we kayak, we do all these things. But at the end of the day, we go home, we live in suburbia. I'm about to move to a city. We work desk jobs, basically. Not all the time. You actually go out and do stuff. I sit at a desk all the time and write.
No, I do sit at a desk all the time. It's
So I feel like, in a way, I think camping is a way to. It's a role playing exercise, right? Like it's a ritual of masculinity. It's like there is a certain. And you know this as well as I do. There's an unspoken tension when you get together with a group of guys and you're all trying to manage a campsite, because you have to set up shelter, you have to build a fire. I feel like the fire building is the point where tension flares up the most, literally and metaphorically.
That's because you guys can't build a fire. That's why.
Yeah, right.
You're always
Exactly.
suffocating.
You're always suffocating. Exactly. There's a lot of tension there, because it's like, there's something to prove, right? There's a
Sure, yeah.
There's something that you're acting out there, and I think that this movie does engage with the masculinity thing, and it engages with the hillbilly stereotype thing, and I think they intersect in maybe in a way that is it's toxic to me personally, because there's a dumb sort of promiscuity, right? That kind of is inherent in the Appalachian stereotype, which is that the hillbilly man is gonna fuck his sister, his cousin. He's gonna fuck the pigs, and hell, he'll fuck a man for just walking on his land, kind of thing. And I do think that's a stereotype of the movie, like of a very dangerous type of masculinity and of like a untethered sexuality that the movie touches on it pretty gracelessly, I think, with that rape scene. Which to me was the most jarring point about it. And, obviously the rape scene is very, it's very shocking. and the film hinges on it. And I think whether the film works for you or not all kind of depends on how ready you are for that scene, or maybe how much it catches you off guard, because maybe it stuns you so much that your brain sort of goes into it's like after a bomb explodes in a movie and your ears are ringing and you're just like, how do I navigate this world that I'm in all of a sudden, right? Because you and I have trekked through southern West Virginia. We have seen people who are poorer and have are disadvantaged, and we have white water rafted, we kayaked, and we camped, we've done all these things. The only difference is that we've never happened upon two people who would like to do us serious harm, and how would we react to something like that? Like what is our out in that situation? Do we lose faith in the system, in humanity, in the law, or do we become kind of cynical and believe that you said earlier that there's no reason to suspect that they would have been given a fair trial. In my opinion, there's no reason to suspect that they wouldn't have been given a fair trial. I think that the reason that Lewis gives is a stereotype. I think that it is one that seems right at first, but ultimately doesn't really hold up to scrutiny. And I think that that's a major sticking point. And it sounds like we're not going to agree on this movie.
No, we're absolutely not. Because totally I think it's I definitely think it's too strongly implicit that like this community is too tight knit. It's James Dickey's sheriff too. He's just like so reprehensible towards these outsiders, and to me it just like it gets rid of a lot of the complexity. And it's weird because I did also definitely think that was the right guy that they killed, which robs it of a lot of that complexity as well. I thought it was more interesting before he takes like those two teeth out of the front of his face, because he is wearing dentures in that scene.
Yes.
So that's what made me think, that's the right guy objectively.
Okay. Well, to me, I think that introduces some ambiguity. Although at the end of the day, I sided with the idea just based on the reaction of what's his name, Bobby, and but also the reaction of Ed, because they're both like looking at this guy and they're like, is this the right guy? Like you can see it in their faces. In my opinion, they're just like they don't know. In my opinion, that it's not the right guy. I think the sheriff I don't feel like is overly pushy or anything. He does tell them not to come back to this town, but it's not like he threatens them at gunpoint or anything like that. And I think justifiably he does believe that they have murdered a man. And
right.
They're not being truthful about what actually happened on the Cohulawasi River. And I would like to rewatch the movie actually with your perspective, and I like to watch it a little bit more carefully because maybe I might have missed something. But I think the divide between people who do appreciate the film and those who see it as a harmful film is reasonable. I think there's a reason it exists. There's a reason this movie's studied in Appalachian studies classes. I think there's also a reason the movie is critically acclaimed. And I do happen to fall on the divide that sees the merits of the film, and I do think they use the Appalachian kind of background as a little, maybe it's a little bit of wallpaper. Because I think at the end of the day, it's a movie about maybe confronting some stereotypes, but for the most part, it's a movie about confronting yourself. It's using the other, the capital O other, as a mirror into yourself and to kind of explore your own beliefs and everything like that. Not unlike Wrong Turn.
Well, none of those complexities exist in
but none of those. This is not a mirror movie. This is a movie about the other, but it's more like Jaws, right? And you brought up Jaws earlier because Jaws is a movie about the other. I believe that. I believe that the shark is a representation of. It's a representation of a lot of anxieties. I think there's a sexual anxiety there. The first person it eats is a naked woman and all this stuff. I think there's an anxiety about Sheriff Brody's whole thing is that he doesn't want to go into the water and he's insulated and he feels like an outsider. And I think he has to conquer that fear at the end. But Jaws conquers the fear by blowing up the shark. There is no there's no moment of poignant introspection or anything. And I think Wrong Turn is sort of like that, although even less complex because none of the characters feel like actual characters.
I should have sent you this interview I found with director Rob Schmidt of Wrong Turn. It's from this year. It came out in January on a YouTube channel called Shay Rants. I was its 86th view. And this guy, Shay, there's Rob Schmidt, director of Wrong Turn, just answering all of his questions on YouTube, less than 100 views. And he says some interesting things. And he does say that he's a fan of those classic new Hollywood movies like Jaws and Alien. And he just wanted to make a, quote, real good Saturday afternoon at the movies movie, which is...
Sounds like he misunderstood the assignment.
His answer to that is Wrong Turn, which came out in 2003. They made, if I'm not mistaken, 2 sequels, 2 prequels, and 2 reboots, maybe, about this.
Oh my god.
And this was apparently, like, the original was Stephen King's favorite film of 2003. You can find that plastered on Schmidt's, like, social profiles and on his website. If Stephen King gives you the thumbs up, you're probably going to wear that as a badge of honor.
Probably, although Stephen King was probably plastered too. So, yeah, he was snorting lots of coke before he went in. He's like, this is great, movie.
How did you roll your tires?
Someone left some barbed wire in the middle of the road. I can't believe someone just dropped it there.
Nobody dropped anything. I just found this tied to a tree back there. Somebody did this.
Southern hospitality at its finest.
Redneck asshole.
Yeah, I think this movie is a wrong turn from the start. Boom!
Whoa, hold on a second. Whoa. There are things that are good about Wrong Turn.
All right. Well, hey, listen, if I'm going to defend Deliverance, then I fully expect a full-throated defense of Wrong Turn.
First of all, did you see Stan Winston's name on the credits of this movie?
I did, yes.
Executive producer Stan Winston, whose name will forever haunt me for getting incorrect in our unreleased first episode that we recorded. But yes, he and Schmidt are kind of like, I guess, the two brain children of this movie. Shot in Canada.
Which is decidedly not Greenbrier County in West Virginia, which is an area that you and I are both very familiar with.
Yeah. I mean, look at a movie 9 years later, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is like basically a response to this movie. It's like a direct line in the conversation. That movie, if I'm not mistaken, has a scene-setting opening that's like the subtitle West Virginia, and it's like droning through a pine barren, like that's almost like a meta joke at the expense of Wrong Turn. Like, we're not even going to pretend like this is actually West Virginia. We're just going to shoot it and say that it is. I love stuff like that. And this was like apparently mostly shot in a city park in Canada too, and they had to like paint buildings out, like skyscrapers out of the background.
That explains all the CGI mountains that we see.
But I think there's effective set design. I think there's, in some areas, not like when they're in the trees. The trees are boring. Why trade an interesting, kind of dangerous house environment, a rundown? It's like,
It's cheaper. It's cheaper.
I guess it's still a set. I mean, they're not like actually in real trees. They're not shooting that on location.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
So I can't say it is, but Schmidt, as a whole, he's from Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. He lives in the woods now, or like, he doesn't live in an urban area. He has this great quote from that interview where he says, "We're scared of nature. That's back from when toddler Neanderthals would leave the cave. The wilderness has been dangerous from probably before we were even beings, and so we feel it in our bones. And in some ways, it's easy to make horrors there."
That's awesome.
That's
deep.
Yeah, he said that. And he's kind of right.
No, he is. And I'm kind of I'm kind of hating on this movie, but no, it's not like the worst thing ever. It does open with a West Virginia like back country highway with gridlocked traffic, which I don't have an issue with because sometimes you do have like gridlocked traffic.
It's all the road work. Yeah.
It's all the freaking road work that they're doing. But I think what took me out of it was all the cars beeping as though they were in New York City. And it's like, why? That doesn't happen in West Virginia when you're in traffic like that. No one's beeping their cars and yelling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's a movie. It's a movie about a medical student, right? He's a medical student.
I don't know I thought he was going down for a job interview. He's trying to get to Raleigh, North Carolina.
He's going to Raleigh. He can't call his I guess the prospective interviewer and be like, I'm late, I'm stuck, I've made a wrong turn.
I've made the titular wrong turn. Just
It's
off
happened
of
to me.
Bear Mountain Road.
Yes. I love the there's a line at the beginning. I think he's talking, I think it's in regards to the gas station attendant who is drinking, he's either drinking strawberry milk
It's
or
definitely Pepto. It's definitely Pepto-Bismol.
Okay. I was like, that's either strawberry milk or Pepto-Bismol. And which is like, dribbling from his like mouth.
His maw.
There's a fly buzzing sound effect, which I feel like you just need that in a movie like this.
Oh, and, yeah. And even before this scene, too, like when he's stuck in traffic and he gets out to ask, like, what's going on? Like, everybody around him is just rude. They're mean.
Yes.
They're very hostile towards him, which is giving again to that stereotype that's just like these people are aggressive. And yet, somehow, Southern hospitality also exists.
Well, he literally says,
so much for
Southern,
that.
Yeah, Southern hospitality at its finest. And I was thinking I was like, is West Virginia even... There's a big debate about this, especially in the state. Like, is West Virginia actually a Southern state? Because I think of it as like a mid-Atlantic state. It's got some stuff in common culturally with the South, and it is mostly below the Mason-Dixon line.
Like, it comes with all the baggage of a Southern state.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We don't actually get the Southern hospitality thing here.
No.
Because apparently we're
maybe that's why they chose
manners.
Maybe that's why they chose West Virginia.
I was watching the movie and I was just thinking of all these zingers in my head, and I was like, this movie forms a distinct subgenre that I like to call Rednexploitation. And I had to look up afterward if it actually exists. Apparently, some people have actually used it, although it hasn't become popular. So
right,
maybe we can popularize the Rednexploitation subgenre.
Rednexploitation,
yeah. I feel like it's got a ring to it. I feel like Tucker and Dale versus Evil is definitely like a repudiation of that subgenre.
Well, this movie, there's nothing really that. Except for like the redneck of it all, there's nothing unique about it. It abides by all of the slasher tropes, like the first couple to have sex, dies, never split up. I could list them off, but it's not. It's more of a creature feature than it is a slasher. At least that's kind of how I read it. Like these the killers who are they're given these names that are like, we got to establish them in the horror zeitgeist, like one of them's called like One Tooth or something. I don't know, like Three Finger.
Yeah.
I intentionally didn't write them down just because they sound like whatever. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a little bit like Jaws, like I was saying. Because you're right about it being a creature feature, because a lot of the movie is about like they don't show like the direct faces of these cretins for most of the movie. You get kind of glimpses here and there until the end when they're like, oh, here it is right in your face, which is like Jaws. You don't show the monster because it's more scary to imagine what it looks like, which I just think in a movie like this it's just more boring, because when we actually do see them, I'm like, oh, this looks good. It's Sam Winston. He knows what he's doing.
Shut up. Damn it.
I love the there's very slight amount of character building in this movie. Chris is a medical student, which they identify early on because he's able to identify roadkill. He's like, oh, is it a ferret? He's like, that's a ferret, or like a mink or something like that.
Like all good medical students, right?
Yeah. He's like, oh, we used to do dissections on them in medical school. I'm like, do they do dissections on like mink? Maybe I don't know. But they set
this
that
one
up
looks
so
like
that,
it has a big tire mark on the back of it.
That's what distracted him, right? Like that's why he crashes into a car, is because he's looking.
Yeah, he's looking at a deer.
Oh yeah, he's trying to identify the deer. Probably he's like, well, we dissected that in med school.
Looks like a whitetail.
They basically set that up so that he can, like, when he finds the human like viscera in the refrigerator of the cannibals, he can look at it and say, yeah, that's human viscera. Like, let's get out of here.
Right. Which is great. Yeah. Which, I actually did find the set design of the I guess I'll call it the hillbilly den, for lack of a better term. I found it effective, and I found that sequence to be probably the most effectively suspenseful of the whole movie. And then once they leave that place, I couldn't really.
They leave that place, but then they go up the hill, and there's actually two other little set pieces that I like.
Yeah.
I like the when they're up in the tower. That's a nice set piece, and I like that they go into the field and find like a ton of. It turns the whole Appalachian stereotype of the junker car in the yard into like a horror motif with all of the cars, abandoned cars of victims like strewn across this field, and I was like, oh, that's probably unintentional, but like I appreciate that. I appreciate that they've made it into something kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
Another zinger I got. I was watching the movie and I was like, what do you call these cretins? And they're hillbilly villains, and I was like, hillbillins.
Hillbillins, wow.
I was calling them hillbillins in my head, and I forgot about that until just now.
Proud of yourself.
Yeah, I'm super proud. I came up with a bunch of zingers for this one because I was bored. And is it weird that they're like mountain men living in like a flat forest, basically?
I mean, I interpreted it as kind of a valley because, they have to climb the hill to escape them, which, like...
That's true.
I don't know.
Just like every overhead shot, which was probably shot like in Canada, is like a flat forest. But then there's like a scene, I think it's like when they get up into the watchtower, the fire tower, and they're like looking out over the forest, and it's like clearly like a CGI like Appalachian Mountain, and I was like, oh, that looks like Appalachian.
Fake.
But it looks like a computer game.
Yeah.
What'd you think about the watchtower?
I thought it was boring. I mean, I just like why are we setting a slasher in, or the set design is boring. The how they go in the trees after that is also boring. Like,
you didn't think it was kind of funny the way they like ragdolled through the trees?
They look like one of those like dummies from Ned's Declassify that like falls out of the window. Yeah. No, is this boring? I don't know. I think that there's a way to do this right. I actually do. I actually think that there is a way to do this like hillbilly slasher movie right, but you have to really focus on the motivations of a character who has basically been, forgotten by society, left behind, left to just kind of fend for themselves, exploited, and then left on their own. Wrong Turn is not the right way to do it. What I'm saying, basically, like, I think there actually is, but I don't think it's been done. Apparently, like, I think the last reboot they did backtracked on a lot of the offensive stereotypes that the franchise is basically built on, and now it's like a cult in the woods.
Oh, that's lame. To me, that's lame because it's like if you're gonna go full bore Rednexploitation, you got to lean into like the offensive stereotypes. You can't, because you just take the wind out of the sails of the whole reason the thing kind of sort of is effective in the beginning. To me, that's just backpedaling, and it's like you rather let it die as an exploitation series than kind of turn it into something that's less offensive. It's like, oh, we're not going to offend the cults, I guess, but like,
yeah, well, I think that the woods itself does lend itself to a lot of different angles you could take it. It is mysterious, there's a lot of scares and spooks that you could do. A movie like The Ritual, it was a Netflix original, I think, came out of, I think mid 2010s. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it did it well, and there's a cultish element to that too. But a movie like this, that really boring slasher angle that they take it, the villains are unmemorable, the sets are mostly unmemorable, and there's just not supposed to be a whole lot of thought about it. It's just supposed to be a movie that might invoke a jump scare or two. That's about it.
Yeah, it's about as well rounded as the characters and the stereotypes. I think the only hillbillion that we gotta trademark that. The only hillbillion that really stuck out to me was the I don't even know its name.
The one that goes like
yeah, the one who's laughing like that was the only one. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, I guess.
That guy's really loud. I like him.
He's really laughing, and he was kind of doing like a mountain man yell, or like just doing their thing.
He just enjoys what he does.
Yeah, he's in it for the love of the game, and I respect that.
Right.
Hey, what are you doing?
I was gonna see if they had a phone. I mean, you guys can wait out here if you want.
You can't just go barging into someone's house like that.
Yeah, because, I'm just thinking West Virginia, trespassing, not a great combination.
Look, I need to pee.
Well, I need to remind you of a little movie called Deliverance.
It's time.
It's time maybe to get into the Q&A portion
Let's
of
go.
the show. So, Wrong Turn has gone on to receive countless sequels, prequels, and reboots, as we just discussed.
Yeah.
If Deliverance had been given the same treatment, what would some of its sequels, prequels, and reboots look like, do you think?
I think that, a sequel to Deliverance would probably kind of defeat the point of that, like, are they ever going to find the body, kind of like suspense you're left lingering with, that dread you're left lingering with. So I think it should get sort of the Lion King treatment, where there's a 1.5, or maybe you follow the Toothless Man through the woods and you kind of get his... maybe the inciting incident is the squeal like a pig scene, and then from there you just like follow him.
God.
Yeah, you just get that right out the gate, because why would you even franchise this story to begin with? You
imagine he
freak.
meets like Simone and Pumbaa in the woods and eats bugs with them, like in the Appalachian backwoods.
Or I think you could take it, if you're going to franchise the whole thing, you could do a crossover with like Tucker and Dale, and the three survivors of the story can like encounter Tucker and Dale in the woods and immediately get the wrong impression about it. And, Tucker and Dale are just out in the woods fishing, drinking a beer, and all of a sudden this PTSD is triggered, and these survivors of a horrible, horrible event. And then you could just have fun with that. You could play around with that, I guess.
I could see it. Yeah, I think you're right, though. Obviously, it doesn't fit with the whole ethos of the movie. But yeah, I could see it. I could see that. What do you got for me?
Okay, so the hit characters in both of these movies have half-brain nicknames like Toothless Man, One Eye, and Three Finger. What would yours be?
Oh my god, that's a hard one. I don't even know. I guess I got to go with a body part of some sort, but like my first instinct is to just be like Billy Goat or like Tractor Man or something like that.
Right, you got to
like,
do the adjective noun or like the number noun.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they covered all the relevant body parts, unless you want to do like jaundiced liver or something like that. I don't know. Like, something just goofy.
That might be more memorable. I don't know. I cannot remember the names of these damn characters. I don't care about them at all.
What's his name? Three Finger?
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but yes.
Does he have 3 fingers on, like, all together or on just one hand?
I guess you got to go back and watch and keep an eye on his hands.
Okay. All right. My next question is.
Wait. Are you going with jaundiced liver? Is that?
Jaundiced liver is my final answer. Yes.
I think I'd be the big cheese. All right.
What about? Oh, wait. I want to change my answer. White lightning. We'll do white lightning. There we go. All right. So you run the Mountain Craft Film Festival. You are the director, right? That's your official title, director?
Yes, I'm the director of the Mountain Craft Film Festival, which is a festival in West Virginia that has a strictly all Appalachian criteria for films. So only films that are made by Appalachian crew or shot in Appalachia or pertain to Appalachian themes. It's a pretty loose, but also... we like to uplift the voices, especially the filmmaking voices from this region. Anyway,
no, that's a nice plug. So which film of these two do you think is most likely? Like, would you expect would be most likely submitted to the Mountain Craft Film Festival?
Right. So technically, I think Deliverance is the only one that would actually qualify to be played. But Wrong Turn is exactly the kind of movie that we would get. I mean, we've gotten them in the past. There's actually a really huge, like horror movie culture in West Virginia. You get a lot of people who are making low-budget horror movies in the area. There's tons of them made every year. So this is like, it's actually kind of a perfect fit. If only they shot it around here.
They really should. Honestly, I think half my complaints with the movie would be solved if they actually went to West Virginia and filmed here, or at least Appalachia, Canada. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I did shoot a short film at a state park one time, and we were roughing it. It presented numerous challenges. Of course, it like rained the whole weekend we were there, so you're really exposed to the elements. And from what I understand, they were kind of that's kind of how it went on Deliverance too. I mean, there was actually like a skeleton crew out there on the Chattooga River while they were shooting. And if it was sunny, it was sunny. If it was cloudy, it was cloudy. And you just had to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the end, I think the film does look very good. All right, what do you got?
Well, so you mentioned that Chris was, what, a medical student?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a medical
Okay.
student.
Well, I didn't remember that about him, or his name for that matter, because he's really boring. But so I wrote, the main character in Wrong Turn, Chris, was going to Raleigh for a job interview, which I do think he was doing. What do you think it was for? And don't say hospital.
His hospital job. No, I mean, clearly he was going to, I don't know. He was clearly going to work as somebody, it's somebody's job to ride around in a truck
And identify
and pick up roadkill, pick it up and throw it in the truck and everything. I know it's somebody's job because, you know, I find it hard to believe that the deer that I see on a regular basis strewn across the road are just getting up and walking away. And there's always like lime and stuff, you know.
Yeah,
so
and
I think
you need 4 years undergraduate for that, plus 2 years master's and a PhD program on top of that as well. But you get programs that can combine those two and expedite the process.
Yeah, well, he seems like he definitely has a passion for it, so that's probably what he was going to do. But don't quote me on that. All right, my next question. These films both construct and confront stereotypes of Appalachians. What other regional identity / ethnic stereotypes would you play on to make your own version of one of these movies?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a loaded question.
So I actually think, we talked about Deliverance using the Appalachian region as a wallpaper for sort of the themes that it wants to tackle. And
yes.
I think it would be great to do an exaggerated, almost like a survivalist story on a college campus. You just like really take these exaggerated tropes. You got like the frat guys, and you got like the tech guys, and you've got the sports people, and they're all existing in this really like constrained area. But the stakes they've never been higher, like it's just, I mean, we went to WVU and that place, we missed the heyday of it, but it used to be pretty rowdy. So you just take all of those stories that your dad says and, you turn them up to 11.
There's definitely a couch burning scene in this movie.
Yeah. And, those stereotypes about college kids, they're not really. I don't think they're hurting anybody. I mean, don't quote me on that, but I don't think they are.
I think if I were to do one, I would do. So we watched the movie Little Italy one time.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I would do one I would do Wrong Turn, but set it in Little Italy, like New York, and the villains are just like exaggerated Italian American stereotypes.
Are you still gonna cast Hayden Christensen in that movie?
Oh, definitely. He would play a perfect Chris. Like he would just be like, "Oh yeah, that's a sewer rat. We used to do like we used to do experiments on them in medical school. They'd be like baking people in like wood-fired pizza ovens and stuff like that.
The cannibal Italian American. All of the villains, if they all look like Mario and Luigi, then you could get away with that because that's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it would definitely be that would be a fun one. I should get to writing that right now.
Well, that's fun because I'm gonna jump ahead to one of my questions here, which is if the main characters in Deliverance had decided to raft on the Erie Canal section of the Hudson River, what challenges do you think they'd face instead? And what group do you think would come out the other side marginalized after that movie, made $46 million at the box office?
Oh my God. I thought you were going to ask me about the Ohio River. So we did pre-screen some of these questions beforehand, but I thought you were going to ask me because I had one ready for the Ohio.
What is it, the Amish?
No. Well, that's pretty good. I should have said that. Amish works, but I was thinking like the Ohio River starts in Pittsburgh, and I was like thinking about like Yinzers and stuff like that.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, come get a lobster roll," what are Ian's doing here? Well, you got like the Pittsburgh Steeler fans and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, like throwing pickles at them and stuff like that.
Yeah, but also the Ohio spits you out in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which the home of Mothman. So I feel like you already have a built-in monster along the Ohio River, at least. So.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I pivoted to Erie because I know you love the Erie Canal.
Shut the fuck up. I know nothing about the Erie Canal. That's why I was banking on you, because you were like, you can pick which one. So I thought we were gonna do the Ohio.
You
River.
didn't pick. I had to think on my feet.
I don't know anything about the Erie Canal. I know I drove over the Erie Canal probably a couple times, but I don't know. We stayed in the Hudson River Valley once, and we got to see the bridge where Michael Clayton was shot. Not the man Michael Clayton, the movie.
Where Michael Clayton was shot. Yeah.
Where his car was blown up, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, the Ohio River answer. We'll stick with that. That was good enough.
Okay. All right. Okay, so which film do you feel more confident about recreating in a long weekend with your pals in the woods? And which do you feel more comfortable recreating?
I don't feel comfortable recreating any movie in the woods after the shoot that I lived through back in 2023 because they're so exposed to the elements out there. But it would absolutely be... Well, it'd be more fun probably to do more of a straightforward horror thriller kind of movie like Wrong Turn. But I really, really want at some point to make a movie on a river. It is like such an ambitious, and props to the crew of Deliverance. They were really out there. I can't emphasize that enough.
They did a lot, like the actors did a lot of their stunts and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be awesome to shoot on the river. So maybe you combine it. You do a slasher on the river or like a chase on the river. They're chasing them down the Greenbrier, and it's like a really dry season, so there's like 6 inches of water.
Oh my god, yeah. Paddle faster. I hear banjo music.
Oh god. Okay, here's one for you. So the villains from Wrong Turn are going to have a spin-off movie a la Alien v Predator, in which they're pitted against another iconic slasher character whose forefinger and Two Eye and whatever their names are. Who are they going up against?
I love Two Eye. They call him Two Eye because he's got two eyes. We are all Two Eye, really, on the inside. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like obviously, like
really going up against Leatherface.
Oh yeah, because I'm pretty sure there's a cannibal thing there too. He's cutting up people to eat them. I'm pretty sure. And you got like the weird family living in the backwoods of Texas, and I feel like you definitely like Wrong Turn. There's no way Wrong Turn wasn't inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh yeah. It takes as simple as a movie as it is. I think it takes a lot of influence from a lot of different things, although that might just be influence from the vague horror zeitgeist that they don't, Schmidt might not even know himself where he's drawing from exactly.
I don't know. Schmidt sounds like a very intelligent and well-read person.
Hey, you know what? I bet he'd be on the show if we asked him to.
That'd be awesome. We could definitely arrange that.
I'll get on that after this.
Yeah, we'll just cut out what I just said sarcastically.
Cut out every negative thing you said about Wrong Turn. You're next. Yes.
Which would be easier to rewrite as a rom-com?
I'm gonna say Deliverance, because you can take that river ride and you can make it nice and peaceful, and you can underline some sexual tension between Ed and Lewis. They kind of have like a real nice back and forth as it is. So you just add a little bit of sexuality to it and get rid of the rape scene. And now you just got two guys who have great chemistry on a river and an unforgettable trip.
It's like Brokeback Mountain, which is a movie I've never seen before.
Well, we're omitting a lot of blind spots on this podcast, actually.
Yeah, we'll have to get around to stuff like that. But is this your last question?
This is my last question. Yeah. So we brought up the whole walk of life conundrum in the last episode, and I just wanted to give it a little bit of context. There's a series on YouTube called The Walk of Life Project that poses that the song Walk of Life by Dire Straits is the perfect way to end any movie. And there are many examples on this channel, examples like The Lion King, Spider-Man, Blair Witch, and it really works for all of them. So my question to you, Tristan, is which one works better with Walk of Life as the final song?
Oh, okay. So the end of Deliverance, it's him in the bed with his wife, right? And it kind of cuts to the river. To
the water, yeah.
The water, yeah. And then the end of Wrong Turn. I'm trying to think of the last shot, because there's a scene at the end where you find out that one of the hillbillies is still alive and kills another cop.
Really banking on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it a thing.
But I think before that, they might just be driving in the car.
Well, that would probably be my pick if it's just them driving in the car, because I feel like the quiet, like the river thing, I don't feel like that really lends itself. You need some motion, I feel like, in the walk of life. Kind of, it's the pan out a little bit. You're kind of coming away from the story, seeing the big picture. You're seeing the Canadian wilderness that's actually supposed to be West Virginia. I feel like that fits better with Wrong Turn than the river in Deliverance, which is like a very like intimate, like really close to the water kind of picture.
No, I agree with you, and I think you can make that fake out ending better too if like Walk of Life starts playing before sort of the post-credits scene. Then you get that like echoey cutoff, and it's like, wait a minute, it's not really over. That would just make it. Supposedly that ending also was mandated by the studio, and Schmidt didn't originally write it, and also got sort of unfairly nudged out of any sequels because he had a clause that he would be attached to any theatrical sequels, so that's why they did direct-to-video, so they didn't have to pay him.
Damn, we got to get Rob Schmidt on here so we can talk about his grievances with the studio.
Right? Yeah, like I said, I'll get right to that after this.
He's a marginalized group now. I do have one last question, which is, what is your hard ticket? I'm genuinely curious what your hard ticket's going to be, because I want you to pick one answer, and I think if you picked it, it would be interesting, because we could maybe rewatch this movie and maybe sort some things out.
But that's not what I'm picking.
Oh my God.
I don't think that Wrong Turn is such a simple movie. It's like a caricature. Everything is so simplified. I think it does less collective harm than the movie Deliverance, which has been...
It's a movie about cannibal hillbillies.
Yeah, I know that. But at the same, I'm not saying it doesn't do any harm at all. But at the same time, like, it is what it is. It's a thriller. It's mindless. It's just abiding by all of these rules that you can just kind of dismiss it and be like, yeah, I saw it. It's inaccurate, and you can't even argue with me about it.
But don't you want to rewatch Deliverance?
No.
Just to see if your interpretation holds up? I
know it does.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, my hard ticket goes to Deliverance. Obviously, I actually liked it, and I don't have no problems with it. I do think there's some issues to think about, but I thought Wrong Turn was a little boring. It was mostly just kind of boring.
It's boring.
I thought it was an interesting exercise to compare the two, but at the end of the day, Deliverance is just it's a more complex movie. It's exploring more ideas, and Wrong Turn's not really interested in exploring anything.
Did you catch that call forward in Deliverance where the mountain man says, "Looks like you guys must have taken a wrong turn"?
Yes, they said Wrong Turn in Deliverance, and they said Deliverance and Wrong Turn, and I was like, that's when I knew. I was like, we did
the right thing. They reached through time to reference each other. That's a beautiful dichotomous relationship. Well, looks like we picked different movies.
We're gonna have to split our popcorn again, and it's a shame. Although I think the runtime is pretty similar, so we should be getting out at around the same time.
Is it?
I don't know.
Well, thank you everybody for listening today. Thank you, Aaron Griffin, for composing, mixing, and mastering our theme song, and thank you, Jerry Tadlock, for designing our brand elements and keeping our podcast looking stylish. You can follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky at Hard Ticket Pod, that's all lowercase, to keep up with what movies we're watching and to make sure you know what we're going into each episode talking about. Follow me on Letterboxd at Jeff Bloggis, that's again all lowercase, all one word, and follow Tristan at prof_physica, that's prof_physica. And of course, join us next week as we talk about How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch. Until then, bye-bye.
It's a hard ticket at the movies. Which one will you watch? Let's decide.